Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. This is an interesting show for you tonight. We have Mr. John Cornett sitting here next to me, ready to co-host. Hey, John.
Hey, Paul. How you doing?
And you're going to be playing some music here in just a moment,
I'm going to give it a shot.
We have videos from Jorge Cervantes talking about harvesting, drying, and curing that we will be playing, and some other videos, including our hemp news. We have lots of interesting news for you tonight. So stay tuned as we bring on our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
All right, our first story tonight is out of our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. A supermajority of Americans, including majorities of Democrats, Republicans, and independents, support making marijuana use legal in the United States, according to nationwide polling data compiled by the Gallup organization, first reported by Forbes magazine. 66% of the respondents endorsed legalization, a total that's consistent with other recent polls and that is nearly 30% higher than the 2012 totals, when Colorado and Washington became the first two states to legalize adult use. And we barely didn't do it in Oregon, but we followed soon thereafter. But a separate nationwide poll released yesterday by PPRI, the Public Religion Research Institute, similarly reported that 2 in 3 Americans support legalizing and regulating adults' marijuana use. There's no buyer's remorse on the part of the American people. In recent years, American support for legalization has only grown stronger. At the end of every day, every age demographic below 65, representing the overwhelming majority of tax-paying public, would rather their dollars be spent to regulate cannabis, not incarcerate its consumers. So legalize it. Down south, Mexico's Senate's expected to vote in favor of a bill to legalize the recreational use of marijuana in the coming days in a bid to choke off a black market dominated by violent gangs. Several Mexican Senate committees tabled legislation on Thursday, put forward legislation to make the commercial production and sale of marijuana legal, expanding on a Supreme Court decision last year which deemed the country's ban on personal cannabis consumption and cultivation is unconstitutional. Mexico's current president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, also has been critical of Mexico's protracted drug war and signaled openness to the new approach. Leaders of several of the Mexican Senate's committees, the Health Committee, Justice, Public Security, and Legislative Studies committees, announced last week that they would remain in permanent session to finalize the legalization bill ahead of the coming Supreme Court deadline. The court determined last year that the country's ban on personal cannabis consumption and cultivation is unconstitutional, though lawmakers now want to go even further by legalizing commercial production and sales. The committees are expected to formally vote on the legislation in the coming days, after which point it will head to the full Mexican Senate and then the Chamber of Deputies. The leaders in Mexico said a vote in the legislature could occur before the end of the month, though it's possible they could ask the Mexican Supreme Court for a deadline extension. My friends at Cannabis, Mexico, first reported on a 42-page draft proposal last Friday. Here are some of the key provisions according to a translation. Adults 18 and older can possess cannabis for personal use, cultivate up to 4 plants, and purchase marijuana from licensed retailers. An independent body or group called the Cannabis Institute would be charged with issuing licenses, setting potency limits, and monitoring the implementation of the law, among other responsibilities. Low-income individuals, small farmers, and indigenous people would have licensing priority. Strict restrictions would be imposed on cannabis packaging. That includes requiring nondescript, standardized containers that do not feature depictions of real or fictional people or testimonials. Marijuana can only be consumed in private spaces. Only medical cannabis patients would be allowed to purchase infused edibles and beverages. Unregistered seeds or plants would be subject to forfeiture. No pesticides could be used on cannabis plants. I like that last one myself. The Mexican bill seeks to improve the living conditions of people living in the United Mexican States. A lot of Americans don't know that Mexico also calls itself the United States of Mexico. And combat the consequences of the problematic use of cannabis and reduce the crime incidents linked to drug trafficking, while promoting peace and security and the well-being of individuals and communities, end quote, according to the text. Mexican Senator Julio Menachas Salazar, head of the Justice Committee, said in a tweet that, quote, "We're legislating to regulate the illicit market of marijuana and decrease the crime incidents linked to narco-trafficking, promoting peace and security for all Mexicans," end quote. Legalizing drugs is the best way to combat the cartels, according to the former president of Mexico, Vicente Fox. Our next story is out of Miami, Florida. The enactment of medical cannabis access legislation associated with lower rates of self-reported opioid use, according to data published in the International Journal of Drug Policy. A team of researchers affiliated with Florida International University in Miami assessed the relationship between medical cannabis legislation and self-reported opioid use and misuse. The authors reported, quote, "Survey respondents living within states with medical cannabis legislation are much less apt to report using opioid analgesics than are people living in states without such laws," end quote, even after controlling for potential confounding variables. They also determined that medicalization did not promote any increase in opioid misuse. The investigators concluded, quote, "The present study found that the medical marijuana legalization states some displacement is occurring away from opioids toward medicinal cannabis. Medicinal cannabis may be one avenue to combat the consequences of the opioid epidemic without amplifying beyond perhaps recreational cannabis. Further, illicit drug use. The association between cannabis and opioid use, however, demands further empirical scrutiny to establish causal order amidst less restrictive environments toward cannabis," end quote. The full text of this study, The Effect of Cannabis Laws on Opioid Use, appears in this month's edition of the International Journal of Drug Policy. Our next story is from Israel. The twice-daily intake of capsules containing plant-derived oil extracts of THC and CBD is associated with weight gain in patients with cancer-related cachexia and anorexia, according to clinical trial data published in the journal Integrative Cancer Therapies. Israeli investigators assessed the use of high THC, low CBD capsules in patients with advanced stage cancer for 6 months. Among the subjects who completed the trial, half showed a weight increase greater than 10%. Cannabis treatment was also associated with increased appetite and improved mood, as well as in a reduction in pain and fatigue. The researchers identified some degree of tumor necrosis or tumor death associated with cannabis treatment, but this improvement did not meet statistical significance. Several subjects dropped out of the study before its completion. The authors wrote, quote, "The results justify a larger study with dosage-controlled cannabis capsules in cancer-related cachexia and anorexia syndrome," end quote, the authors concluded. Synthetic THC encapsulated in sesame seed oil, or Dronabinol, is already FDA approved in the United States for the treatment of anorexia in patients with AIDS. It's also approved as a treatment to offset chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting. This study, called The Effects of Dosage-Controlled Cannabis Capsules on Cancer-Related Cachexia and Anorexia Syndrome in Advanced Cancer Patients, a pilot study, appears in this month's edition of Integrative Cancer Therapies. Our next story is from Santa Fe, New Mexico. A 23-member task force has issued explicit policy recommendations to New Mexico's Democratic Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham regarding the legalization and regulation of cannabis. The report proposes a regulatory framework governing the retail production, sale, and taxation of cannabis. Recommendations by the task force include prohibiting local municipalities from completely restricting cannabis sales, automatically expunging criminal records, limiting overall taxes on retail cannabis sales to no more than 20%, allocating tax revenues to various programs and state agencies, including the state's medical cannabis program, and allowing those with past convictions to participate in licensed cannabis industry. The report's authors estimate that adult use legalization will create an estimated 11,000 new jobs in the state of New Mexico and yield some $620 million in sales within 5 years. The task force's chairman stated, quote, "Together we believe the framework we're submitting is right for New Mexico. It's clear that we have both the necessary apprehension that goes with the venture as well as the right and the talent to make this happen the right way," end quote. In a tweet, the governor said, quote, "I look forward to working with the legislature to get a bill to my desk next year," end quote. State House lawmakers passed adult use legalization legislation this past spring, but the bill stalled in the New Mexico Senate. Lawmakers ultimately enacted separate legislation decriminalizing low-level marijuana possession offenses. Our next story is from right here in Beaver Country, down in Corvallis, Oregon. The imposition of taxes on adult use retail sales of cannabis products is associated with temporary changes in purchasers' behaviors, according to data published in the journal International Tax and Public Finance. Investigators affiliated with Oregon State University and George Mason University assessed cannabis purchasing trends in Oregon immediately prior to and following the imposition of new retail taxes. The researchers reported that the imposition of retail taxes was associated with a stockpiling of cannabis products just prior to the policy's enactment. In other words, customers purchased larger than usual quantities of untaxed medical cannabis products, as well as with an increase in cross-border substitution afterwards. The authors wrote, quote, "In response to the tax-induced price increase in Oregon, it appears that proximity to Washington's recreational market caused some consumers in Oregon and in Washington to substitute Washington marijuana for Oregon marijuana," end quote, the authors concluded. A 2018 study published in the journal Addiction concluded that most consumers are willing to pay higher prices overall for cannabis products available in the legal marketplace, but that excessive taxation on these products, specifically those that drive marijuana price above $14 per gram, induces many buyers to return to the illicit market. This study, Marijuana Tax Incidence, Stockpiling, and Cross-Border Substitution, appears in this month's edition of Tax and Public Finance. Our next story is from Oklahoma City, the Sooner State. It's been a little over a year since Oklahoma patients began applying for medical marijuana licenses, and state officials say hundreds of thousands of Oklahomans have taken part in the program. Under Oklahoma State Question 788, a person 18 years of age or older can apply for a medical marijuana license with the Oklahoma State Department of Health after receiving a note from their doctor. If approved, the patient would then have to pay $100 to obtain that license. It's about half what ours in Oregon is. Since applications became available in August of 2018, officials say thousands of Oklahomans have applied for the license. As of October 7th, the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority said it had approved 200,000 patient applications, which is an average of 3,500 a week since the program began. In contrast, Oregon has never had more than about 75,000 medical marijuana patients. Just today, officials with the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority announced that the program is one of the most successful in the country. Melissa Miller, the agency's assistant director, said that 4.44% of the population of Oklahoma has a medical marijuana license today. She also said she believes that Oklahoma's registration per capita is greater than any other states with medical marijuana programs. It's no secret that the program has also had a big impact on the Oklahoma economy. The state's already received more than $35 million from revenue in fees and licenses and $7.8 million in tax revenue. Oklahoma is doing it right. I think Oregon could learn from Oklahoma. That's the end of our Hemp News segment for tonight, and Mr. John Cornett is ready to play some music. Hey, John.
Hey, Paul. Yes, I think I am here.
Good.
Got everything harvested. Just need to take a couple of things off the hanger. We've been curing the last of our flowers.
It's the season.
Anyway, this song right here is about flowers. Goes like this. We grow flowers, Bubba Kush, CBD that is, Purple Train Wreck. That's right. White Widow helps us like Gorilla Glue. Strawberry cough, y'all. Durban Poison. It's just a few of them. Life is good. Life is good. Oh yeah. Life is good for you and for me. So good. So good. So good. So good. We like Trainwreck, Northern Lights. We like Shrek too. Remember that one? Sour Diesel. Oh yeah. We like Godpa, Purple Haze. We like cheese too. And that's Cinderella. Oh yeah. Life is good. Life is good every day. Life is good for you and for me. Yeah, so good. So good. So good. So good. It don't matter which you like. Don't matter when you do it. Just matters that you do it right. Get down to it. So good. So good. So good. So good.
All right. Thank you, John. So good. Yes. Thank you, viewers. We are live tonight. It's Friday, October 25th, 2019. And if you're watching us tonight, you can call us at that number right down there on your screen. There it is. There it is. 503-288-4442. That's 503-288-4442. And if you have any other questions, you can call, drop them. If you're watching, you can watch us anywhere in the world on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/RestoreHemp. And you can type in questions there as well and ask us questions. Welcome back, John. Oh, you're messing around with that microphone.
Just 1 second.
There, you've done it.
Good to see you. Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you.
Good to be back.
See you, viewers. Again, if you have any questions for us tonight, call us at 288-4442. So you're done with your harvest. You didn't have them. You've just got two yourself and your spouse as your patients.
That's right.
There, right?
Yeah, that's we don't.
So
want
I have 5 patients registered currently at my garden,
Okay.
and the OLCC came and
decided
to look at my garden twice in the past month.
Yeah, I'm not quite that bold. I don't think I've got. I mean, I don't have enough people around me that I can get to help me do that many patients.
Last year,
and the paperwork too, all that.
Yeah, I can't afford it, but the patients are paying. Last year we had the Oregon Health Authority regulated, and we got a call the day before they were coming.
Okay.
This year with the OLCC now in charge of regulation, because they keep changing the rules every few months. They've come twice with no announcement. Just
do they
showed
come
up.
around when they're authoritating? Do they come around with like handcuffs and stuff and like batons
I didn't see any of that.
All that kind of stuff. No,
of that. They
don't
came
have
around
any
with cameras and
none of
stuff.
that. No, just they got cameras.
They got cameras and they want to take pictures.
Of course. Well, that's good. That's fair for everybody.
Pictures.
It's fair for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, we just want to be fair, right? I mean,
yeah.
We always sought to have legalization, as I recall, and you've always told me back when I was hemming and hawing about complete and utter freedom, liberation from the scourge of other people's opinions about cannabis. I was willing to take the baby steps. This is a baby step. We're here having people tell us how to use a harmless substance, and that's okay. I wish they'd do the same thing with other things like sugar. Let's see. Let me think of about 100 other. I don't want to get into
There's
details.
a lot of
on
those
it.
things, aren't there?
But,
You know, we are taking questions tonight. If you have a question, you can call us. That number there on your screen, 503-288-4442. And we have a studio audience here. You're welcome to come down and join us in our studio audience at the Open Signal PDX studio most Friday nights. And standing by, we have a off-camera microphone, and I can see out of the corner of my eye that Judy is there, ready to pose a question or make a statement. Go ahead, Judy.
It was very interesting in your news report. You covered a report that appeared in a business journal, International Tax and Revenue, I believe it was, International Tax and Selling, talking about how what a gigantic mistake it is to overtax cannabis, what that produces.
Yeah, it substitutes. People go back to the black market.
I'm incensed.
Go to other states. Go to Washington if the tax goes up in Oregon.
I'm absolutely incensed at what our legislators here in Oregon have done to us. And it's, like I said, it's not because I think they're a bunch of bad people, but they have done absolutely everything wrong.
Yeah, they've screwed it all up.
What they've
screwed
created
it all
now.
up. I mean, here we have people dying of this vape lung illness, and instead they're worried about cannabis being diverted out of the state. Not that that isn't an issue, but it seems like people dying is more important than cannabis being diverted. It seems like the safest thing in those vape cartridges is the cannabis. It's the byproducts that they put into it, whether it's cutting agents so that it will flow because it's just too viscous. It's like thicker than peanut butter when it's cold.
Need something to help it flow or stay.
Yeah, and so some of them have been putting soybean oil in there to make that happen, and apparently that soybean oil causes pneumonia.
I was going to say,
a very rare form of pneumonia.
Yeah, there's certain things we don't even know about what happens when we activate or vaporize it and then send it into our lungs, almost directly into our blood system.
Well, there's a long history of smoking. So we know what people do happens when people smoke it. You know, it is that season though, and our friend Jorge Cervantes has given us permission to use his videos, and so we have a couple Jorge videos tonight about drying and curing cannabis. So we're going to run this video, and we will be right back in just a moment.
Let's see, over here, we've got the one box of stems and old worthless leaves. Over here, we've got a box of leaf and bud. And I've been a little bit, I'm not saying lackadaisical, because all of this is medical, and most of it will go towards cooking and whatnot. So these are the leaves, but the leaves, there's a lot of little buds in here. You can see this, more buds. There's some fair-sized ones, but I'm pretty loose with all of that. Lots of buds in here. See, I've been trimming for a few hours here. Now let's take a quick look. We'll look at these buds in a moment. And here's the harvest so far. I've got it here hanging up in this expandable screen shelf. I love these. And what I do is I put the tag right in here. See, now this is a sour diesel down here. That's one sour diesel plant. I know it's one sour diesel plant because there's one tag with it. Now here's one green crack plant. This gives you an idea of the harvest. This was the smaller of the two green cracks. There's going to be one more. Now here's the Blue Dream. Now you've watched the earlier videos and stuff, and you saw this big funky plant I wasn't real pleased with. Well, that was before I pulled all these buds off of it and harvested it. And see, look, these are pretty roughly trimmed here, and that's okay. They're roughly trimmed. That's fine with me. Let's see, yeah, and like I say, I'm growing for several patients, and they can trim up the rest as far as I'm concerned. I put in a lot of work, but that Blue Dream really made some buds. Now here's two of these Royal Kushes right here. You can tell because there's two tags. And, it's an okay harvest. There's quite a potent plant, very resinous and whatnot. But one of the problems with this, anyway, this one, see, the problem is with some of these really big dense buds is those little caterpillars get inside here and they start chewing things up. And anyway, when they start chewing things up, they start pooping things out. And when they poop, well, that just stays inside this bud here and stays rotten. So and it rots, and then it makes bud rot. So you can see this was a really long, tall bud that I trimmed up, and it's just the top of it that's really a problem. So anyway, let's get that focused in there. Yeah, it's just the top of it. So I'm just going to toss this whole thing. And there was one plant, see, I put them off to the side. There was, actually there was two plants of that Royal Kush that had problems. One of them was quite bad, but this one you can see the whole top of the plant has a problem. Here, I'll just go do like this. The whole top of the plant has a problem here. There's a big bud, you can see, but that's all. I'm going to toss that. I'm going to toss this over here too, the top of this. This is a nice big long bud, and this one had some, more mold in it. But this is pretty much all the loss. I saw a couple of the sativas that had a little bit of loss, and I'll tell you, I want to show you this. See, right here, I'm going to, I always dip the scissors in the alcohol to sterilize them. So that's pretty much the deal so far. It's just me here right now while I'm shooting the video, so I've only got two hands, and I might set the camera up, I might not, I don't know, on a tripod. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull those plants out there right now. I've got to cut away. Actually, let's go out and take a look. I've got to cut away. Oh gosh, it's raining again. Yeah, I've got to cut away the trellis that's in here. See, I've cut away all this trellis. I'm gonna, cut that away. That takes a little time. And then I take that and separate it out, and I'll throw that away separate from any of the green matter. But here, let's do this. Let's take a look inside these plants, see what they look like. Pretty, I don't know, dinky little buds inside, not a lot. Like I say, I'm not super impressed with these plants. They're all right. But later I'll do a potency test. Yeah, that'll be pretty cool. That's the thin layer chromatography test. Oh, got a little shaky on the camera there. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to take these, hang them up, and then just keep harvesting. And it's fun. Whoops. Yeah, it's fun because what I've done is I just hang them up in my garage. And, the garage, it's facing toward the street and everything. Before I would have been paranoid about how much they smell. But, since it's raining, they're not as fragrant right now. And I can hang them up in the garage and not have a problem. So, that's it so far for the harvest video. We'll talk to you guys real soon.
So that's our friend Jorge Cervantes talking about his harvest there. It's like a little personal use thing.
A lot of hard work.
It is. You've had a lot of work too. You said you had quite a bit of loss because of mold out.
Oh my God, we got hit by broad mites, and we learned of the ultimate fix a little too late. I hear that if you hit them with predatory mites, that'll basically go in and gobble them up, and when they're all gone, they run out of food and they die. But what we instead we treated it with a product from a local store that deals in organic fix-it kind of stuff like that. In this case, we were interested in something that would kill the mites without killing our plants, and that fit under Oregon's certification of what do you call it, organics, organic, because I'm very concerned about my beloved partner's health, and the last thing I want to do is for her to become contaminated with any kind of
poison.
Yeah,
I don't want anybody to
anything,
get contaminated with any poison.
Yeah. So,
you know, especially anybody.
So we just want lots of good, clean
cannabis.
medicine.
Yes,
it has
indeed.
been kept in good environment, dry, and.
We have another Jorge video we're going to run now. It's a little bit shorter. It is about drying your flowers, drying big flowers. So we'll be back in just a few minutes here. Thanks.
Okay.
After you get your buds harvested, you can do one of two things. You can either just cut them and hang them like this with the leaves hanging around them. And I'll tell you, this is okay, but you're making yourself a lot of work. What's going to happen is these are going to dry out, and it's going to take a lot longer for it to dry out, and it'll take and it'll dry out more unevenly. And then you'll have to cut all of this stuff off later when it's dry, and it's really tough to work with. So I'd advise not to do it like that. I'm so glad they left me this example so I could show this. What you want to do is you want to manicure your buds while the leaves are nice and soft and supple. That way it's a lot easier to cut the leaves off, and everything's easy to work with. The leaves kind of stick out and everything, and you can trim them a lot easier. And then after that, you can dry them. And check this out. You can dry these little babies. Look at that bud. This was totally trimmed with the machine, and afterwards lightly touched up by hand. And I'll tell you, that baby is beautiful. It's really a nice looking bud, and it's going to dry up just fine. In fact, I've got a bigger one right here in my pocket. Look at this baby. Oh, that's a nice bud. It's nice and tight, and it's just, it's real dense and thick too, you know. So what they do here is they dry these in these containers like this. They're really cool. You just pick one up and drop it, and there you go. You can harvest and dry a kilo. That's about 2.2 pounds in this container right here. And there's plenty of space in here for air to flow and stuff. Really a good thing. And then you just hang this from the ceiling, as you can see they've done here. And it's real cool because what they do is just come in here and write on a piece of paper when it was put in, and a little code here so they know what it is, and it's all open. They've got an air conditioner in here. They keep the temperature, boy, right now it's what I'm guessing about 76, 77 degrees, and it's the humidity is low. I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm guessing it's around 55, 40, somewhere between 40 and 55. And at night it's going to rise a little bit, but that's okay, because what we want to do is have these buds here for several days, anywhere from 5 to 10 days, depending upon the humidity and stuff in the air. You just kind of have to check them. But remember, every time you put your buds in to dry, you want to write down what time it is when you put it in, put the buds in there, and then also the date and the strain, because I've seen so many people just mix all their strains together at the end because they don't know what the heck they have. But I love this little thing. Let's take a quick walk through. Wow. Wow. This is amazing. It's so cool that you can dry everything so quickly, or I mean, so efficiently here. Sure, you could have these could be thinner, but it just doesn't really allow the airflow. That's really important. Let's walk through here. Gosh, it's kind of like bumper cars here. Just move this. So this will just really give you an idea of what's here, the volume you can dry in an area quite efficiently and inexpensively. Wow, this is amazing.
All right, that's Jorge Cervantes. We got to thank him again for the use of his. What were you going to say?
I was going to say we always, these days, we always have at least one dehumidifier going because
pulls
there's
a lot of moisture out of the air.
Yeah,
it helps in this environment.
Yeah, right now, yeah, it's a lot of moisture in the air right now.
We have one of our studio audience members is at the microphone. Go ahead, Larry.
Hey, Paul, thanks again for another show. Appreciate all you do for the
you.
cause. John, good to see you. I have a question for you. You said you came maybe a little bit too late on your mold and your animals. Is there something that you can do ahead of time to prevent that? Or
yes, there is.
You know, before
I understand that there is now, don't quote me on this, but and please do your own research, but I think some kind of sulfur dip, if you suspect that the grower might have a problem with broad mites, or the one who's providing the clones or whatever it is, however you're acquiring your starts. And that's what happened for me. I didn't do all the necessary preventive care by dipping them. I thought I dipped them enough. I just dipped them each one time in that in a product I got, again, from a local store here. It's organic, and I didn't do too much follow-up on it until I looked and all the crop was infected. And that was, again, I wish, hindsight being 2020, I heard, though, that predatory mites is one very good, positive solution that'll basically nip them in the bud, so to speak.
So just I'm sorry. So just go ahead and do that every time for everything. And
yes.
So then you're comfortable saying there was nothing in your room that caused that, or they didn't come from outside other than just the start. That's the way to. Okay.
There is a remote. I will admit there's a remote possibility that it was some carryover from last year when I had 2 other CBD plants that were infected. They were a Tesla strain, and I had 2 of them, and it was the only ones in my garden that were infected, and that spread to strawberry cough and to a godbud and some other plants. But we were able to arrest it before it eradicated our garden. But in this case, Judy can back me up on this, I think it hit just about all of our, we had 8 of the CBD specific plants, the Bubba Kush CBDs that we were hoping to have plenty of medicine for the next year, oil for my wife and I both. I need it for seizures and chronic pain and other stuff, and she needs it for likewise some very serious problems.
So I think the broad mites are just floating through the airs on little threads, just like spider mites, but they're microscopic. You cannot see them.
Right.
So you can only see them with a 60 power or plus microscope. So when I first had them a few years ago, I didn't notice until the flowers just weren't forming, and the leaves were kind of cupping a little bit. They weren't like spider mites, which you can see in that they formed webs that were visible, but the leaves kind of formed a cupping motion, and the flowers looked more like a little tiny piece of broccoli. And so I've used a thing called green cleaner, which is a bacteria that eats the stuff. It's a product out there that help, but we never saw this bug in Oregon until about 5 years ago. And with the change in climate and international trade and plants crossing around the world, these broad mites have suddenly appeared, and they're really problematic here in Oregon. And so
you just got to know how to fight them, and without going to extremes.
There are other diseases out there that are becoming more prevalent as well, but we'll have to see how it goes. Well, we have another little video here. One of my mentors is a Kentucky attorney who passed away back in 2012 named Gatewood Galbraith, and we made a little video in honor of Gatewood, and we're going to play a bit of that right now. We'll be right back after this.
It is obscene that we have 66 out of Kentucky's 120 counties that can't even afford to educate their own children, and yet the Kentucky public is sending out hundreds of millions of dollars, and the American public is sending out billions of dollars in tax-free income to the international criminal syndicates in South America and Mexico for a plant my granddaddy used to grow by the thousands of acres, and I'm going to redirect that money out of the hands of these international criminal syndicates, and I'm going to put them into the capital tax coffers of Frankfurt so I can lift the people of Kentucky out of poverty and out of the misery and out of these last place standards. This money, but I'm going to redefine the role of government in policing private behavior in the state of Kentucky. We live in a police state. We live in a police state. You can leave here, go out and get in your car, and they can set up a random roadblock in front of you, make you get out of your car, bring a dog up to sniff you, your car, and all its belongings, take blood out of the yarn, make you pee in a bottle, and stick their hands where the sun don't shine. That's a police state. That's a police state on that house.
I don't know, Jack. It reminds me of another fellow I was telling about running for governor. He said, well, I'll be for you or against you, whichever helped you the most. Any government that tells you that the solution to a present-day problem is doubling the prison population over the next 20 years has its head stuck where it's never going to discover the 1,000 points of light of George Bush. My opinion of it. These people's idea of future full employment is to make half of us prison guards and the other half prisoners. This man is an alien. He's not a conservative, he's an alien. He and Ronald Reagan both. They are willing to imprison a whole generation of people to keep intact the petrochemical and pharmaceutical monopolies in this country, of which he's well vested in each. And I think he's a vampire. I don't think he's an American. I think he's a vampire willing to suck the life out of all us victims in order to remain powerful in a powerful position. But let me take this opportunity right here. Wherever this gets shown, let me tell you something. I am pleased and honored to be in the presence of one of the most brilliant men in the United States.
This gentleman next
Jack
to you,
Baird is author of Emperor Wears No Clothes, and so much more than just an author. A researcher and a dedicated and diligent activist, and a man who I know for a fact is responsible for tens of thousands of people in this country being able to come out of the closet and stand up out of the darkness and stand up out of oppression and despair and lives of quiet desperation, and be able to point to the source of knowledge and the truth and the point of light that this man right here is personally responsible for putting together. I would not be where I am today were it not for Jack Hare, and I know that a lot of people would not be walking tall and with dignity and a sense of pride and a sense that they do no wrong by communicating with Mother Earth through the herb and in other fashions. And this man right here is responsible for as much of it as I know of. I'm sure other people deserve credit to have helped him out. But this man right here is one of the most brilliant people in the United States today, and I hope someday that this country and the people in it will reward him appropriately for what he's done for freedom and individuality and civil liberties and Mother Earth in this country. I want to take that opportunity right now.
Does that mean I get free grass for the rest of my life?
No, I was going to ask you that. Hell no, I got to make profits, son.
That's what I'll do.
I got to start buying
Here, let me show you something you can take back and we can give you better photos. This is Mr. Henry Ford in 1941 with Popular Mechanics magazine showing off his car made from hemp.
Oh, is that when the whole car itself was made from hemp?
And it says so right there in Popular Mechanics, 1941. Is that nice? One more nail in the car. That's an I mean, they should have never let us find that one.
Oh man, that is. Let me tell you right now, this is not the case of a blind hog snuffing out an acorn every once in a while. This is dedication and intelligence. You know, I think Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. This man right here has sweat his ass off.
Oh, yes, he certainly has.
Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you, I had a lot of good teachers. Okay, this man wrote a book that I read that was one of the, him, Michael Aldrich, had written some of the greatest work on hemp long before I even really understood hemp. Well, he wrote it in '77. The Kentucky hemp. The Kentucky, what was it?
Marijuana feasibility study.
It was fucking blew my mind away. It was by adding that and the prospectus. So he is not somebody who needs to come to me to learn about hemp. I learned a lot of my hemp from him.
Wow. I was born in it, Jack.
They know marijuana does not make you crazy. They know marijuana does not lead you to crime. They know marijuana does not lead you to harder drugs. But marijuana is a system of control that they can exercise over you because you step out of line from their corporate policies. This is the Million Marijuana March, and today there are demonstrations just like this in every major city across the world.
I think that the laws against marijuana are the most vivid illustration of where this government has overstepped its bounds in policing private behavior. The petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military-industrial complex has utilized the lawmaking powers of Congress to get through legislation which has criminalized the farmer who's gone into competition with these synthetic manufacturers. Hemp is the #1 fiber, the #1 fuel, the #1 food, and #1 medicine. So the laws against marijuana are the most important step that this government special interest have put together and put on the people to remove them from the natural cycle of things. No pot! No pot! We smoke pot! We smoke pot! Unless people actually get out in the streets and actually demonstrate and actually push the envelope, this First Amendment has no life. I've been at these things when we had 50 people. I've been at them when we had 20,000. And I'm always empowered by seeing one person stand up and try to give life and vibrancy and existence to the Bill of Rights in this society. We live in a police state, there's no doubt about it. You can leave this demonstration and go get in your car and get out on the road. And they can set up a random roadblock in front of you and make you get out of your car, bring up a dog to sniff you, your car, and all its belongings, take blood out of your arm, make you pee in a bottle if they think you got something. That is a police state. I will not live in a police state. Our fathers and our grandfathers did not fight and die on the beaches of Normandy and Iwo Jima so that you would have to pee in a cup to hold a job in America.
There is a peaceful solution called the Peace Revolution. Now let's take back America. There's a war and we're in it. I know we can win it, so let's take back America. There was a dream, so believe it and get ready to receive it. Now let's take back America. And when the war is over and we've won it, let's remember how we done it so we don't have to do it again. There is a peaceful solution called the Peace Revolution. Now let's take back America.
Pardon me, I don't think marijuana was a problem back in 1937. It certainly wasn't a problem. It's certainly not a problem today, and it's all over the place. So I don't know how it could possibly have been a problem in 1937, except for the fact that when they passed that law, for the first time, the federal government took over the right to tell you what seed you could plant in the ground and what you could do with the product of that seed. Let me put it like this. Some people who don't know me give me a reputation for wanting to legalize drugs. I do not want to do that. I'm in the business of trying to license and regulate cannabis as a crop. Tomatoes are legal. Alcohol and tobacco is licensed and regulated. And I seek to license and regulate, take it out of the black market status, just cannabis now. I would take the law enforcement dollar, which we would save off of that we're currently spending on detecting, arresting, prosecuting, and incarcerating people who associate with the cannabis plant. If we change the laws, we'd save all that money. I would go after the hard drugs. I'd go after the synthetic drugs, the crack, the cocaine, the heroin, those kinds of synthetic drugs, man-made drugs, which destroy the spirit and overcome rights of determination and self-choice because they're addictive and destructive to the body.
But the most insidious is the prescription medicine scourge. There are pharmaceutical medicines and their impact on society have paralyzed entire portions of Kentucky, including vast regions of eastern Kentucky, which have no economy and have no jobs, and are the main sources for illicit OxyContin and Lorcet and Lortab. And these pharmaceutical companies are out there spending billions of dollars encouraging as many people as they can to take this poison. And they know that it is addictive, and they know there's a huge black market that builds up around people's necessity of continuing to take this addictive medicine once their doctor stops their treatment. So there is a big black market up there, and the pharmaceutical companies are well aware of it. For less than a penny a tablet, they could create OxyContin so you can't crush it up and snort it. So they're aware of this, but they didn't do that, and it's not because they didn't want to save a penny a tablet. It was simply because they knew they had a big addiction situation, and they were going to sell a hell of a lot more OxyContin than if everybody was addicted to it.
You know, one of the things that Gatewood, one of his sayings was the synthetic subversion. And he was referring to in the 1930s, 1940s, there was a conversion from natural substances and natural materials, natural fibers, etc., to artificial stuff, synthetic fibers. And a good way to look at that is, you know, for thousands of years, hemp was the #1 thing that was used in twine and rope and things like that. And it was quickly replaced by the pharmaceutical-derived synthetic nylon. And we can see the same thing happen with cannabis and medicine replaced by pharmaceutical drugs, which are mostly petroleum-based. We see it in construction materials. We see it in just about every aspect of society where natural, renewable products replaced by often caustic, toxic, artificial, synthetic products. And that was a really astute observation that really kind of, you know, helped me form what I think is that prohibition is only a symptom of a greater, more systemic problem, which is a war against the natural world, really, in so many ways. And I think it helps to also demonstrate how hemp, cannabis, if it was reintroduced into you know, the global marketplace as an industrial commodity, we could, you know, take some of that protection of Mother Earth and of nature and that reverence and respect for all that is natural, take that back a little bit and put a little bit in perspective. You know, right now we are cutting down the rainforest at just an alarming, shocking level that's going to affect our entire global biosphere. It's going to affect our weather patterns. It's going to affect the climate change that we're experiencing right now. And it's never been more important to get hemp and cannabis at the forefront so we can start reverting back to some of these natural substances as much as possible.
And the question of hemp, the question of cannabis, is the most vivid illustration of how this government has overstepped its bounds in policing the private behavior of citizens. When they told us we couldn't plant a hemp seed in the ground, they severed us from the natural cycle. That is what they seek to do. I call it the synthetic subversion, where they want to replace all the natural products on earth that used to be grown out of God's earth and God's seed, and replace them with synthetic products and knocked our farmer out of the agrarian society and the agrarian market and made the ghost towns of our small cities and villages across this country. We need to rediscover a cash crop, one that will allow our farmers to go back to the land, one that will allow our farmers to compete with the petrochemical pipelines. You plant U.S. 7% agricultural land in hemp, you would have to import another drop of oil. We can replace the spills in the Gulf. We can replace the environmental catastrophe that the petroleum pipelines have cast upon Mother Earth, and instead let our farmers grow hemp as a fuel crop. In 1991, Willie Nelson and I poured hemp oil into my Mercedes diesel and drove it across Kentucky in my bid for governor. That's why he started his biofuel plant. Listen, folks, you all have been handed a torch. Jack Hare, bless his soul, passed away. I'm getting old up here. You know, we cannot carry this ball much longer. You have to become educated. You have to learn the truth. You have to reach out there and grab the responsibility of maintaining your freedom. Every generation must re-win its own freedoms. And those very sacrifices, right up to the very last second I've been talking to you, made on your behalf, cannot continue anymore. What really counts is your all's commitment to what sacrifices you're willing to make in the future to maintain your freedom. And it's right there in front of you. I encourage you to learn the law. I encourage you to learn the political process. I encourage you to reach out there and take responsibility of your own freedom. Live your life like a warrior. God bless you all. Thanks for having me out here in Seattle.
All right, come on back.
Hey, this.
All right. Well, that was our friend Gatewood Galbraith. Gatewood introduced me back in 1990 to Willie Nelson. So I got to thank him for that. We had him out here in Oregon back in 2011, but he passed away very unexpectedly from pneumonia I think it was January 2nd of 2012. So he didn't live to see marijuana legalization. Neither did Jack Herer, but they still inspire us. And one of my favorite sayings from Gatewood is always the biggest applause line in any speech I give, and that's that the people who brought us marijuana prohibition, that made this little flame here illegal, are the petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial, transnational, corporate, elite, fascist sons of a bitches. And it's our job to restore hemp, and we're starting to see that happen on a national basis. John, you're ready to play a song. I want to thank you for coming on short notice.
Oh, you're welcome, brother. No
thanks. And we want to thank you folks for watching. It is another live show here on the 25th of October. We'll be back again live next week. We hope you tune back in then. You can watch us on the internet at facebook.com/restorehemp or on cable TV here in Portland, and we stream live there at facebook.com/restorehemp, but we are archived at youtube.com/cannabiscommonsense. If you or a loved one need help finding a doctor to help authorize medical marijuana here in Oregon, Washington, or anywhere in the United States, you can call our office at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606. You can call now and leave a message, or call anytime. Again, that number, 503-235-4606. We're out of here this week. Mr. John Cornett will be playing a minute of music. Tune in next week and help us restore hemp.
We'll be just another asteroid floating through the mind of Sigmund Freud. So many years we've been up on this place. Who believe the future that we face? Whoa, let's make the best of it now. 'Cause you never know when your time will pass. You've got to do just what you want to do. And if somebody tries to ruin your day, walk away. Did you notice that the world's so strange? 'Cause our atmosphere's about to change. So many reasons why we kill the trees. Life is passing with a subtle breeze. Whoa, whoa.